My name is Jill Coyle, and welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce, where we talk the nitty-gritty aspects of divorce and help each other come through this not only surviving, but thriving. I'm a divorce attorney, and I'm interviewing other experts and people just like you who are going through or have been through a divorce, so you can have the latest and greatest information on all things before, during, and after divorce. Let's dive in. Welcome to another podcast of No One Dies from Divorce. This is exciting. We're talking with Jan and Jillian Yuhas, right? Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Oh my gosh, I'm really excited. You guys, we are talking about all things co-parenting and children coaching, mediation, how to prepare for mediation. And my guests today are perfect to be able to kind of guide us into that and give us a lot of really good information to help you, whether you are starting the process, thinking about it, going through it, or maybe you're done and you're having issues. This is going to be the podcast for you. Let me just tell you a little bit about our guests. So Jan and Jillian, they are identical twins and they look very, very similar today, but they are licensed MA, MFTs, CPCs, and family mediators. They're also co-parenting and children of divorce coaches, which I love. And we're going to get to a little bit about exactly what you guys do. But they guide co-parents and children to overcome challenges of divorce through creative solutions that are children-centered. Their expertise is a blend of family psychology, certified family conflict resolution, negotiation strategy, healthy boundaries, and real life experience to guide and serve all family members. You can learn more about Jan and Jillian through their mediation services and coaching programs at their website, which is divorcefamilymediations.com. So welcome to the show, Jan and Jillian.
Thank you for having us, Jill.
I'm really excited because I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit of your backstory because, you know, we have a lot of like mediators on here. We have coaches, we have parent coordinators. So people that do maybe a little bit more specific, but you guys kind of decided to tackle on more of a broader subject that I think is so important in divorce. So tell me a little bit about your backstory and what got you guys to where what you're doing today.
So I would say our backstory started when Jillian and I, we used to volunteer at a crisis hotline. We were about 22 years old, many, many moons ago. And we used to mediate between teens and parents the teens had ran away from home. And so that kind of got us on our journey of helping families through challenging times, which led us into getting our master's in family psychology. And from there, we went on to become certified mediators and coaches. And we are also children of divorce as well, growing up with in two separate homes. So we're very familiar with the dynamics and present issues that can be brought up during that type of environment.
That's amazing. And so your experiences with that kind of led you into this, like, such an important area. As you know, I'm a divorce attorney. I tend to do high litigation divorces. And one of the hardest things is that, you know, one of the biggest things we see in divorce is the breakdown of communication. People are just not able to communicate. So then we're like, okay, we want to get a divorce. And we're like, great, that's fine. You have that ability to do that. Let's do it so we can protect you, your future, and your family. And then we get into, well, now we've got to talk about your kids and we've got to talk about this co-parenting relationship and how you're going to communicate after the divorce. And people, I mean, are just like, I don't know if I can do that. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Like, Jillian, maybe you can answer this. Why is it so hard to be a co-parent?
I think a lot of times people are still stuck in the marital cycle of that power struggle. And so whenever they go into the co-parenting relationship, they're still wounded based on whatever happened in that marital relationship as to why it dissolved. And so they haven't yet transformed their mindset in regards to how to go from, I'm dealing with my ex who's a jerk, and now I need to also still talk to my ex, but now I have to do it in regards to my children's needs, and it's not about my needs anymore. So trying to transition that mindset is very tricky, especially when they don't have much time for alone time or have no contact with this person. So trying to break that emotional attachment with an ex-lover while still trying to talk to them is very challenging.
Right. And I always say, I mean, the hardest part about a divorce is people just like have this atomic bomb go off and a big cloud is just covering their, you know, and they just can't see rationale based on the fact that they're just going through this, you know, intense emotional and mental, you know, I guess trial that they've never technically gone through. And one of the problems is I always tell them, I'm like, listen, you have to now be able to separate the husband, the wife from the mother and the father. Because you can be a really crappy husband, a really bad wife, but you can be a good mom or a good dad. And we have to separate that because a lot of people just want to throw it all together. You know, that person sucks. I hate them. I want to be divorced from them. And it convolutes their ability to think rationally about their ability to parent. So in that situation, Jan, like what are advice to these parents that are kind of going through that inner turmoil of just wanting to lump it all together and just be frustrated with that other person, and therefore it's affecting their ability to co-parent?
So the number one thing I would recommend anybody going through this process is to focus on their emotional regulation and self-love. So in order to, we need to heal those triggers that our co-parent may try to inflict upon us or provoke us from the marital discord that went on. And until we heal those emotional triggers and learn to manage our emotions, we will keep that power struggle alive. So really learning to regulate our emotions and learn how to respond in more of a matter of fact way versus attacking or accusing the parent of specific actions they're taking or accusatory language they're using back at you or gaslighting, whatever their, you know, motive may be. But the more we learn how to regulate our emotions, we can find our inner peace. And also really healing and focusing on your own self-love. What does it need for you on a daily basis to feel your own inner peace and not allow this person to have any control over you anymore?
I love that. I mean, you talk about triggers. I think that that's a lot of things, because when people think of triggers, they think, oh, like a drug addict or an alcoholic. Oh, they have these triggers that therefore revert them back into that behavior. So when people are going through a divorce and it maybe none of that has been, you know, is part of it, they're like, well, what do you mean by triggers? I don't have triggers that, you know, lead me to that. And you're like, no, actually you do. Obviously something led to trigger you to be emotionally upset, physically upset, mentally upset, that is leading you down this road of needing a divorce or needing to get rid of. And I loved what you said, Jan, because we have to be able to identify those triggers so that you can take back your own power. And you can recognize what you can do to not allow that person to put you into a space where you can't think rationally. That is the best for your children, the best for your family. So I really, really love that. And I think what you guys are doing when you're talking about, you know, guiding co-parents and children to overcome these challenges, I mean, what do you feel like is the biggest challenge that co-parents have in moving forward through a divorce?
I would say the biggest challenge they have is effective communication. They haven't figured out how to more or less take this marital power struggle in terms of their communication of attacking each other or going back at each other, and change it into more of a business-like communication style.
Yes.
So we're now in the business of raising our children together. How are we collectively meeting their needs? How are we helping them thrive in their two different environments?
Yeah, I love that. Because one of the things I talk about is, you know, you can absolutely hate that other person. But if you have children in common, what I like to talk to my clients about is let's strip down all of that hatred, all of the reasons behind you, you know, you're hating, and let's look at your children. And I always strip it down and I say, listen, at the end of the day, do you want what's best for your children? Do you want your children to succeed? And then I turn it around on them and I say, do you believe that that's what your spouse wants as well? And usually at the end of the day, they're able to kind of breathe a little bit and they're able to say, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I want my spouse. I do believe my spouse wants what's best for our children. I say, okay, great. That is that commonality that we're now going to build this co-parenting relationship off of. Because if you can just trust each other enough that you want what's best for your children, then that's the building block to kind of start this co-parenting relationship. Jillian, do you have any other thoughts kind of behind that?
I think communication is the biggest one, but also like how they're communicating. I notice a lot of times there's not a communication structure in place that supports the health of the co-parenting relationship. So even though there's a lot of co-parenting apps, I don't find them to be as beneficial because it's almost like as if they're just texting and that person has to respond a lot of times whenever it's convenient, or they expect their co-parent to respond immediately because it's a message coming through, where email definitely keeps more emotion out of the process and allows people to write in a more formal manner or think about how they're going to respond, because it's not just like an instant quick text or message on an app. But using email is definitely a better format, and there's less communication going back and forth, which people might be concerned about. But if we have too much communication, that gets us into bigger trouble too.
Right. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, texting is the worst form of co-parenting conversations. It's everything about a text can go wrong, whether it's not done correctly. An emoji can be an emotional, it's so easy to just lash out to somebody in text. In fact, I get, clients that are obviously emotionally charged and get angry at me. And sometimes they do it in, a text, or they do it in an email. And the first thing I do is I'm like, okay, I'm going to call you on the phone. Because when you're calling on the phone, you're not able to kind of have those rants or those emotionally charges that a normal, rational person would most likely not do. Now, for co-parenting, I would probably go the other side and say, don't call each other on the phone, because that's just not going to lend anybody anything well. So, but texting is really a problem. And I guess you guys know there's a lot of these like co-parenting apps that are coming out and coming up. And so it's interesting that you said even sometimes those are just a substitute for texting. So, so Jan, what are your advice to these co-parents then? What is the best and most effective way to learn to be a good communicator? They suck at it. I mean, they're divorcing because of it. So what are some tools that we can teach our listeners to say, okay, this is where we can start?
The first place they can start is to start asking more questions and do less talking. When we ask more questions, it allows us to gain insight into the other person's perspective as to how come they're wanting to make this choice for the children, versus us assuming and responding back to them, because we may not fully understand their perspective or where they're coming from. And so until we gain insight on the two different perspectives that each parent may have, we're going to more likely be an impasse. So it almost becomes a negotiation process back and forth in terms of trying to figure out what is the best method forward in order to meet the children's needs. And so when we learn to ask discovery questions such as, can you help me understand what you mean by XYZ? Or how did you come to that decision? So we're understanding their thought process around the decisions they're making versus, and we don't want to use why questions because people feel attacked, such as, well, why are you doing that? Or why would you, person's going to become defensive immediately. So we want to just gain more insight and use that insight to your advantage to present solutions to move forward.
I love that. I really do. I think that that's really, really important. Because the first thing that we want to do is we want to attack. I mean, we want to get defensive. You know, this is somebody that we don't trust personally anymore. That just like Jillian, I think you were the one who said, like, this was your lover. Like, this was somebody that you guys, you know, really, you know, you never enter a marriage thinking you're going to get to this point. And so one of my biggest goals is, as a divorce attorney, is I want to help people recognize that you can get from a place of being very, very emotionally charged to a place of rationally charged. Meaning that if you're in that place of where everything is making you angry, everything is making you want to do an emotional action, we need to, just like you said, get back to what is triggering you about that. And we need to deal with that. Which the first thing to do is probably go to counseling and have a therapist and you talk about it to figure out why you're triggered and why you're allowing it to emotionally charge you. Because once you can get past that, once you can take your power back, deal with your more emotional issues with this, we move to a more ability to be rational and make decisions that are really in the best interest of our children. Would you agree in your guys' line of work?
I personally would definitely vouch more for coaching just because it's more solution focused. And so we're going to actually, while we're working through our emotions and understanding how the situation occurred, and we can break down the thought process of both people involved here, but then we're going to also say, okay, this is our next step. This is what we're going to do to try to resolve this situation and try to move forward. So that way we're not just talking about our feelings, but we're taking action. When we take action, our anxiety goes away. We feel more at ease. We have more inner peace in terms of how we're able to feel better, because we feel like we're taking back our power and we have control in a way that feels good to us when it comes to communication with our ex.
Yeah, most of the time, if you go to a therapist, they're not going to usually provide you with the communication tools. They're also not going to, we actually get therapists that refer us a lot of high conflict cases because we take on a lot of challenging personality types in terms of most of the communication and co-parenting work that we do. Because a lot of times it's not a place for therapy. Therapy is there just to help you understand and validate your emotions as to why you're experiencing what you're experiencing. But we actually really need the tools in order to get out of this like stuck position we're in order to be in a better and happier, healthier place.
Oh, I love that. And I love, actually, I've never really, I think, made that distinction on my show, the difference between divorce coaching and or therapy. And I think that that's really important for our listeners to hear, because we've had both on our show. We've had both therapists and divorce coaches. And I think you heard it best from Jillian and Jan, who are both, and can help understand the difference and the importance of both. So I really actually appreciate that, you guys making that. So when I kind of want to shift just a little bit to what you said about high conflict personalities. We talk a lot about that. Like, co-parenting is possible with two rational people that want the best of their children. But when you're dealing with a high conflict personality, somebody that possibly has been diagnosed or maybe not diagnosed, but you have a running theory that they possibly are, borderline narcissistic or grandiose, histrionic, kind of personality disorder. That makes everything harder. It just does. So talk a little bit about the difference of that and what you guys kind of give for hope to those people listening that maybe feel like they're in that situation.
So there is hope if you are dealing with somebody who's very challenging in terms of how they're stuck in that power struggle. So sometimes we work with one individual parent, sometimes we work with both at the same exact time. But even if I'm working with both parents at the same exact time, I'm usually communicating with them separately outside of the sessions in order to help them understand how they're impacting the power struggle within the co-parenting dynamic. Because even if we have one personality that's way more challenging, more aggressive in terms of their nature, or the gaslighter, or just, much more manipulative in terms of their characteristic traits and behaviors, we might have somebody who's more soft-spoken, but the person who's maybe more of a people pleaser or more the avoider, they're still playing into that power struggle, whether they think they are directly. It's an indirect sometimes. And so I need to help them become more assertive in their voice in order to ask the questions to the more aggressive personality places. The only way you can back an aggressive type manipulative personality into a corner is to ask discovery questions and stay 3 steps ahead of the conflict that they are trying to create. So I work with both in terms of altering their way of communication to better understand each other and not trigger each other as much.
I think also too, when we understand someone has a difficult personality disorder, things of that nature, we have to also remember that's their problem, not our problem to deal with. Like, try to like separate ourselves in terms of the things that they're doing, because their behavior is telling us exactly how they're feeling in that moment, which is typically powerless, feeling insecure. And so they're trying to use this like entitlement, grandiose sense of self in a way to create power, to gain power. And so when we know that, then we can also separate ourselves from that, knowing like this is their problem, not ours. And we can only control our own problems, what we need to deal with, versus letting them control our life and how we feel.
Absolutely. And I always say that if you're dealing with a high conflict personality on the other side, a lot of times you're never going to be the last word. You're not going to be the last person. So you have to be able to learn to negotiate to where you end up them accepting, or when they counter to whatever you want, it was actually something that you were willing to take anyways, knowing that they're going to be that person that's never going to let you have the last say.
And sometimes you treat them like they're children and you give them two different options and say, do you want A or do you want B? And then when they choose, then they feel like, oh, I made the decision. I'm in the hot seat. I'm the power person here. So then they calm down a bit, but you actually gave them the two choices. And you gave them two choices that worked for you as well. And so in a way, we end up with more of a win-win outcome.
I love that. I think that that's really important. And I've written a whole chapter in my book, No One Dies from Divorce, about dealing with these high conflict personalities. It's an issue. It's hard. And like I said, I mean, I kind of laugh because we can all become better communicators as human beings. I think actually we're innately kind of sucky at it. And I don't know if that's just from the fact that we are just like, it's nature versus nurture. We're not naturally born into communication, and then we're just really bad as human beings teaching it. But it's always something that we as human beings should be working on getting better. If you become a better communicator in your marriage, I promise you your marriage is going to grow stronger. It's going to become a better place for you. If you become a better communicator at work, you're going to become a better employer. You're going to get opportunities to grow and and thrive in who you are. So there's just a lot of benefit from saying, hey, you don't have to wait for the biggest trial of your life, such as a divorce, to learn how to really communicate.
Correct. And I think communication, it's not taught necessarily in the schools. It's not always taught in the home. And so it's our responsibility as we are enter the adult world. We have to learn to teach ourselves, especially if we desire to have healthy, relationships or amicable relationships that are fulfilling and create, less problems in our life, because obviously communication can create problems, but it can also solve problems.
Right. Absolutely. And so I wanted to go back to like the divorce coach. Excuse me, because I'm really fascinated by that. And I think my listeners probably really want to hear this is like, there's a lot of people out there that claim they're a divorce coach and they will take your money. Most of them don't take insurance. So it's an expense and it's an investment for anybody that's going through a divorce. And they're already spending money usually, on an attorney that they feel maybe is kind of vital. So I wanted you guys to tell me, like, how do you find the right divorce coach that is really going to do the right things, not just taking your money and telling you to, X, Y, and Z. That's really not getting into the meat of things and helping solve the problem. I really wanted to hear that.
I think it's important to understand, do they speak your language? Do they look at their company overall in terms of like, what is their experience or their education? Look at things where they are showing you how they have the solutions versus just saying, I can help you with this. I'm, help everyone with this type of problem. But a lot of times there's ones that will focus on specific niches. So I think getting really clear on their message and make sure it speaks your language of what you're feeling, as well as what you're trying to achieve based on your goals.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I kind of agree with everything that she says. So in terms of, yes, you definitely so there are people out there who are divorce coaches, or there's, people out there who, and they're more or less just probably helping the individual go through the process in terms of the healing and taking back their power. Or there's someone who's more like us, where we focus more on co-parenting, or we focus on the children if they're in a parentification, process and helping children learn boundaries even with their parents from the whole divorce process. Because a lot of the children that we work with, or the families we work with, a lot of the children are experiencing parentification, meaning they're having to take on parental roles, or emotional turmoil is being displaced onto the child, and the child is not fit to go through those experiences.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's like you said, it's like really looking at what that coach specifically helps people with, and make sure it identifies with who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Before signing up with anyone, to make sure they have the ability to help you and achieve your goals, and ask them questions too. Like, vet them out. Ask them, can you help me with, X, Y, and Z? Have you worked with someone in this type of situation? Like, and get the transparency that you need before saying yes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it would be really, really helpful, because as a divorce attorney, so many times I'm spending so much time on the emotional part that my clients are spending too much money on coming to the rational part. And, it's frustrating as an attorney, because I don't want to just waste my clients' money at all. I know I'm expensive. I want to get to the point where we can get a fair and equitable settlement that's going to be, protect you, yourself, and your family. But so many times that we are dealing with the inability to make decisions based on the fact that they're stuck in this emotional cloud. And so I am very pro therapy. I think that that's really important, but I am, through this process of me getting to know people like you, I am pro divorce coach. Whatever you need to be able to deal with those emotions, in line with your attorney, I think will save you money in the long run. Because one of the things I wanted, because you guys are mediators as well, is I wanted to talk about how so many times, we want to rush to mediation. At least some attorneys do. I do not do this, because I've learned they want to rush to mediation because they just think the faster we get to mediation, the faster we will be able to resolve this. I can't tell you how many times, if I've gone to a mediation too early, I'm not able to resolve it because my client is not in a space to resolve anything. And it's all about getting to that place, like I said, getting through that emotional bout so that they can be more rational about it. And so I kind of wanted to know, have you guys seen that in your line of work, that you've seen where somebody gets to the point where all of a sudden they're taking their power back, they're dealing with what's going through. And so therefore in mediation, it becomes so much more successful?
I would say most of the cases that we've taken are individuals, even if they have conflictual personality types, they are looking to find a peaceful resolution for their children, and they are learning to put themselves aside so they can find resolution, even though we do hit roadblocks in terms of the communication or negotiation at times because of the conflictual personalities. But most of the people that we have, they've decided to kind of go outside, stay outside of the courtroom as much as possible, because they just value trying to keep peace in their homes.
That makes actually a lot of sense, because you guys are probably dealing with more collaborative, where people want to come to you to resolve it so that they stay. I don't get that part, right? I am hired because they need the bulldog, they need Joe Coyle, they need Coyle Law for that specific reason. So I now see where we kind of differ a little bit on that. But what I've seen in my practice is that when people come to me, it is just like, they have high net worth, high assets, they do have children. I mean, there's just a myriad of issues that are going on, and they are just like in this like space of just really struggling to understand or know what way to go. I mean, some of them are just trying to take one step at a time. That's how, scared and fragile they are. And so what I've suggested is that we have to, get a divorce coach, or we need to get therapy involved, so that I'm not being the one that you're calling every day with some little issue that is becoming, that is obviously it's important in their mind. But at the end of the day, I get this a lot. I know I'm rambling, but I get this a lot where somebody says, I need to be able to talk to my attorney on a weekend. There is an emergency. And this is what I tell my clients. If the courts are closed on the weekend, that means there's really no emergency that can't be dealt with on Monday. Obviously, we have domestic violence, we have issues like that, but the police are there for that. So that's where I try to get my clients to understand, is that calling an attorney on a Saturday is only going to cost you more money that you didn't need. We need to get to a point where you can look at this and think, okay, it's not an emergency. How can I deal with this now? And then we can talk through it in a strategy of, going forward through their divorce. So those are just some of my thoughts that I was thinking.
Right. And that's having professional boundaries in terms of your business. You're not there to take on the emotional support role in terms of them going through the divorce. You're also not there to take Saturday calls. So that's where it comes into having our own professional boundaries in terms of how we run our companies, and outsourcing that to someone who is there to support them for those more emotional matters that they're experiencing.
And then can help them work through, okay, you're facing this, emergency. What are the best steps?
It could be emotional emergency.
Correct.
Is what it feels like.
Yeah. But what are the steps can we take to try to make the best of it? What can you do? Like, what are some, decisions we can make here? What are our choices? And help them sort of break down their thought process and know that more than likely they have the answer, they have the solution, but they're so emotionally heightened, they don't know how to make that decision. So a lot of times just helping someone and having that accountability to break down the communication of their thought process helps them make a better decision right there. And they really didn't even need their lawyer to do it.
Bingo. I mean, that's exactly right. So I guess from your guys' perspective of saying that, what would be some of the biggest tips you would be giving our listeners if they are in that space of how do you get there to be able to break down and make those rational decisions?
I would say definitely work with a coach, even if it's for a month or 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, whatever you can invest in. So just so you can learn the basic communications and how to actually think and speak for yourself. Because if you don't learn that skill, you're going to constantly be hitting roadblocks, feeling like you're powerless, feeling stuck, and just not being able to do what's in the best interest of your own life as well as for your children.
Yeah, we even get clients who, with co-parenting, they've been divorced for, 8 years or even longer, and they're still in this emotional power struggle of high conflict because they haven't taken the steps in order to figure out how to diffuse conflict with the high conflict personality. And it's what you have to ask yourself, what is it worth to me to keep going through this every single day? What is that emotional weight? What is it costing you at the end of the day to keep having to feel like you have no peace in your life? That's not fair to you.
And it's affecting your relationship with your children. At the end of the day, if we're in a bad mood, our children are going to experience that. They're going to see that. They're going to also be like, oh, why is mom upset all the time? Or why is dad, throwing the pillow across the room? Like, they're going to watch that. And so it's really important for parents really just to take a step forward, invest in themselves so they can be the best parent, but also heal and move forward in their own life.
Yeah. And my next question is, can anybody do this?
Yes. If they make the choice to do it, you have to be willing to commit to doing it.
And you have to stop living in your victimness. I mean, we hear that a lot. Like, I'm the victim here, but it takes two people to divorce in this situation. You are two people to make children and two people to co-parent. So at the end of the day, it's a choice, just like you said. It's a choice to stop living in that position. And I say that all the time. Like, your divorce is the best situation to wipe that slate clean. Figure out what you want to be the best version of yourselves. And I absolutely, I say this every show. You have to decide today is the day I'm going to invest in myself. And you are worthy of that. So many, especially women going through divorce, just want to stay in this place of I'm not deserving of it. I just have to stay here because it's my, they just want to blame themselves or live in guilt or live in their victimness. What do you want to say, Jen?
Yeah. If we stay in that victim mindset, then we don't allow ourselves to really heal and move on to find fulfillment and happiness again. Because, you can't move on and find a new relationship if you're going to stay in the victim mindset. And yes, maybe somebody was the victim of domestic or emotional or psychological or even financial abuse. Maybe you went through that. That is a hardship, but we have to take that pain and turn it into our power and turn it into our purpose and how we're going to move forward in our lives. Because everybody goes through something that's usually pretty painful in their life. It's kind of just the way that life throws us curveballs from time to time. But we have to decide, when are we going to turn that page and really take back our power? So this person who may have put us, this is the thing. If we don't get out of the victim mindset, we give our ex power over our life for the rest of our life. Yep. And the only way to no longer give them power over you is to move forward and heal.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's a choice. So many want to just say, oh, it's not my choice, or it's just too hard. And, I always say that, bricks are or excuses are the bricks that are stopping us from moving forward. Like, your excuses are going to be the reason why you can't just jump this, move forward, and become a better version of yourself. And the only person that are laying those bricks at this time is you. And yeah. I get it. Sometimes it's hard, especially in the moment. Sometimes it's hard to get there and realize that you maybe are the one laying those bricks, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. That's what, Jan and Jillian and, what I am doing day in, day out is to help you understand that it's okay. You can be there today. You can be sad today. What are you going to do tomorrow? And tomorrow is going to be that choice that you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to have a better day than yesterday. And whatever that looks like, it's small steps makes great leaps. And Jen, you have something to say?
I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, it's one step at a time, and it's whatever we're choosing we want to do with ourselves that we're going to start the next day. So yeah, and healing is not easy work. It is going to be painful. Yeah. It is going to be hard. But it's going to be worth it in the end when you get to that place of inner peace and happiness.
And I think too, there's always a lesson for us to learn and a blessing that comes with that. And the sooner we accept that and look for the positive component of that versus focusing on the negative, we set ourselves free from worries and sleepless nights because we're actually owning our life and learning that, okay, where did I go wrong here? What can I do now so I don't make the same mistake going forward? And so that way I can have a healthy lifestyle that's fulfilling and rewarding and joyful.
Yeah. And they might go through a whole lifestyle process. Maybe we're a stay-at-home parent and now they're getting out into the, getting a career. So can be a whole entire lifestyle transition, let alone on top of that, you're having to emotionally work through everything as well. So it can be a lot of stress for somebody to take on at one point in time. But that's why when you have experts to help you through that process, it can make the process that much easier for you when you have somebody to talk through and help guide you in terms of what are the next best steps. And when you're in alignment to your truth and your values, you can say, okay, well, this is who I'm going to be now. I'm going to be a career woman, or I'm going to be a career dad, or this is who I am as a parent now in my home, now that I have the freedom to be this style of parent.
Yeah. And people, if you are broken coming out of a relationship and you don't fix yourself, you will be broken going into your next relationship. And your relationship does not fix you.
No.
Nothing. It all comes within. And so until you are whole, until you know who you are worthy, you are happy and on your own 2 feet, the relationship only elevates that. And so our goal, and specifically what Jillian and Jan, what we're all trying to do, is help you recognize that if you become that whole self, your next relationship is going to be amazing, because you're going to be able to find somebody that doesn't need you to be anybody else but who you are.
Yeah, and a lot of times if we don't do the work, what we do is end up in the same type of relationship, and just the face of the person changes, in all honesty, because we're taking the same behaviors and things that we did, the same mindset that we did in our first relationship, and is going to get displaced. Or if we, our partner betrayed us, we're probably going to take those trust issues and displace them onto our new partner. So we're just going to have these patterns of cycles, which isn't fun. It isn't doesn't feel good. So why are we choosing to keep going through that?
Right. And statistics show, second divorces are higher rates, third divorces even higher than that. So it's clearly a cycle. And that's where we're trying to stop this is we shouldn't be ashamed of the divorce. The divorce should be the movement to become a better version of yourself. And I want to kind of just finish on a final thought. I want to talk about why is co-parenting so important, good co-parenting so important for your kids?
Good co-parenting is really important because it affects the psychological well-being of your children. And so when you have each co-parent really supporting their children in terms of their extracurricular activities, helping them with their homework in the evening, just being able to, create food together, meals, or have conversations, the way you interact with your child is going to set them either up for success or they're going to carry on the generational patterns that you've been experiencing in your life. And so the more we can help our children, the better off we set ourselves up for success, and the family starts to feel peaceful and really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the more peaceful the co-parenting relationship is, the better off your children are going to be, because otherwise, if it's not peaceful, your children are definitely going to show you through their behaviors, because children often don't verbalize what they're experiencing, but they're going to show you through their behaviors, whether they become anxious or withdrawn, or whether their schoolwork is starting to, fall off the map or whatever.
And I think too, she and I had a pretty decent co-parenting situation with our biological parents. And, to this day, it's we want to be able to help other people navigate that and understand, if you have two people who are on board and focus on the children, it's much easier than feeling like you're at war and having to, wake up and fight a battle every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And the number one thing your kids want is to be able to love both parents and both parents to love them. And if you're part of that, from keeping that child from being or feeling that they can love that other parent, or that they can accept love from that parent, you are alienating. You are part of the problem. And that is when our children are fell. And so I ask all my listeners all the time is to step back and look to see if you are mimicking any behaviors that would cause for your child to not feel that they could love that parent and or receive that love from that parent. And if so, I urge you to change those behaviors. What are some things that parents can take away from this about, really strengthening their co-parenting skills and being just that, being the parent that allows those children to be children? And I would love just some final thoughts from you guys on what you think is the most important thing our listeners should be hearing.
So children need safety, security, and consistency, and of course, love in order to thrive. So you can create that safety and consistency and support for the children and put your differences aside from the marital discord that occurred or the wounds, and put the children first in terms of all of your communication, your children are going to be in a much better, healthier, and happier place. And it's going to allow them just to be children. They don't have to worry about taking on adult problems in their life when they're not emotionally prepared to do such a thing, and shouldn't have to do.
I also think too, setting healthy boundaries with your co-parent. And that doesn't mean telling them what to do or what not to do. It's about how can we work on this together so we benefit our children. And also seeing children for who they are. Respect children if they're having, a tough time. Ask them what's going on. Have those really deep conversations to help them, because they feel a lot of times that they're at fault and they don't know how to advocate for themselves or speak up. And so I think really having healthy boundaries with our co-parent, having healthy boundaries with our children, having children know how to set boundaries, it's going to help everyone just feel and function much better.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things I see as a litigious divorce attorney is that when your child has a basketball game and you both want to go watch, you should be able to do that. And you should be able to act like an adult, that child can go to either parent during that game or afterwards and say, hey, I love you. Thanks for coming to my game. But we see so many times where a child is like, oh, it's not my that parent's parent time. My mom said I couldn't talk to you. Or we hear these horrible stories about families confronting the other, like your sister or your aunt or uncle, whatever, and they're confronting the other spouse, like saying mean things about the other person. That affects your child. And I know that a lot of times we want to vent to our family, we want to vent to our friends, and so maybe we say all these bad things about them behind their back. But that is going to trickle down when that person sees this child. And that is going to come into play when we're talking about not putting your child in the middle of being able to choose a parent. So maybe stop and think that at the end of these ranting conversations, maybe you should stop and say, you know what, but that parent is, the parent of my child. And I respect them enough to know that my child should be able to love them, and teach your family to be respectful of that as well. That was just a little tangent that I had in my head that is really, really, I think, sad when I hear these stories about these children being put in the middle, at these like events that they're having. And I guess that would just be my tip of don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah,
So,
they are not the messenger, as well as pick up or drop off. Don't give them envelopes to hand to the other parent. Don't say, please tell your mom this, or please tell your dad this. I think that's another big thing, is like keep your children out of it and let your children get to live their life so their childhood is not ruined by adult, relationship issues.
right. And heaven forbid, we're bad communicators. We want to learn to communicate better so we can teach our children to communicate better. I mean, it's just the cycle. And so, if you want your kids to be, thriving and be able to communicate and be successful in their own right when they become adulthood, well, they're learning from you. So be thy example, right? And teach them the ways that they should. And sometimes it sucks because you got to put your big boy pants on and you got to realize that, you know what, I just got to be the bigger person today, even though it's really hard. And I have a really hard, difficult, high conflict, opposing party. But guess what? That's okay. Being the bigger person just means at the end of the day, you get to have that satisfaction of being that bigger person. And we're all cheering you. Great job. Because it's going to be better for your kids.
You just got to become numb to the noise. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Well, I have just really enjoyed this. And I know that we kind of went all over the place, but I think that the topic that we talked about was so important. So many of my listeners are specifically wanting to know more about this. So thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jillian. You guys were just so insightful. I'm really excited for our relationship and getting to know each other better. One of the things I just wanted to make sure is that where can my listeners find you? Because I think you guys really have shown that you got the street cred to know exactly what needs to happen. And I think my clients and my listeners would be very fortunate on finding more information about you guys.
Yeah, they can find us on our website at divorcefamilymediations.com, or they can always as well find us on Instagram at Divorce Family Mediations as well. We're always posting daily inspiration and helpful co-parenting and parenting tips there.
That's great. And I know that you guys are based out of Dallas, Texas, but do you guys work with people all over the country?
Yes. We've had international clients as well in terms of co-parenting situations too. So we're here to help anybody that can speak English, more or less.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. That's another episode of No One Dies from Divorce. Remember, you can find me on All Things Jill Coyle. We're here for you. We're here to help you get through this. And remember, you are going to be okay. This is just a stepping stone to greater things, and it just is you making that choice to become better today. Move forward. We're here for you, and we're excited for your future because we know that it's got some amazing things in store. So thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jillian. Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, follow, and share. I'd love to hear your questions and feedback. you can contact me at community@jillcoyle.com. See you next time. I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. Any advice given on the podcast is general and shall not be construed as legal advice.